Hi there, hope you're well. A very warm welcome to this first ever podcast from Horsham Football Club. My name's Joel Hufford on hosting duties for this inaugural edition. I'm very pleased to say that Hornets men's first team manager Dom Di Paola is with us. Dom, welcome along and thanks for taking the time to join us.
No worries, thank you.
Got lots to talk about. Season just gone, season coming up, all the comings and goings that have happened in the meantime and lots of other stuff. I wanted to start off though with a few different questions just to give people a bit of an insight into your football journey. So starting off, what's your earliest footballing memory?
It was I don't know whether it was a 90-minute game because there wasn't a lot at the time, but it was about 88, 89. It was Man United versus Forest. My uncle's a big Forest fan, so for whatever reason that was on. So that's my first memory, and my first sort of main memory of football was the Liverpool-Arsenal game in 89, the end of that season where it all culminated on the Michael Thomas goal. So I remember watching that again in my uncle's workshop. So he had it on a Friday night. So they're the sort of the earliest memories I can think of football.
And who did you support growing up?
Kind of Man United. All my mates were Liverpool fans because obviously the 80s Liverpool were really strong. But just liked Brian Robson, to be fair. So as soon as I saw Brian Robson as a player, that was kind of the team I followed really as a young player, mainly, but not like a die-hard. I've never been a die-hard fan of anyone. I used to go and watch Worthing, so I was quite a big. You could say I was a Worthing fan really when I was a kid. So I used to go and watch them a lot.
I think you've answered my next question. You mentioned Brian Robson. Was that your player, your favourite player?
Yeah, I love Brian Robson. I always think Cookie's like him for us. So that's probably why I like Cookie so much. Always getting injured, but wholehearted and. Love Ryan Giggs, and then Ronaldo is probably my favourite player of all time. Like R9 Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo. I just think he was phenomenal. If it wasn't for injuries, people would have categorised him in exactly the same way as like Maradona, Messi, and that. So yeah, they were my favourites when I was young. I used to love watching Ryan Giggs. Very underrated now. He doesn't get the credit he deserves because of some of his off-field stuff, I think. But he was, an electric player.
Before we get onto the questions about Horsham, one final question. If there was one thing you could change about football, what would it be?
No one's going to get really surprised by this. The refereeing, just the way it's done now. I think the fact that the PGMOL sort of like manage and marshal their own people just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I think it's really hard for refs now. I think it's all about interpretation. I don't think things are particularly clear. I think as you go down the pyramid as well, I think it's even harder because they don't have any of the support systems that they'd get in the Premier League, but they're expected to referee in the same way. I would just simplify it. The lower down it goes, clear and obvious, distance between, like clear space for offsides, and just make the game far more straightforward. You can dumb it down and just make referees' lives a lot easier. I just think it's just impossible for them. And I also think they fast track the young lads and use us as a test bed for them, and I think it's impossible for them and it's impossible for us. And I think it's just creating referees that aren't fit for purpose. And I think you're seeing it at all levels really, but I would change refereeing. 100%.
Have you ever tried refereeing yourself?
I've done a couple of kids games, under 11s, under 10s, but I think when I did my level, so what used to be level 3 or level 1, level 2. I think you used to have to do a refs module. We did a bit of the refs module as well, which was quite interesting. But yeah, it's a really tough job. But I just think it's made harder by how it's managed and what they're expected to do. And I think they're taught now a certain way of behaving, and I think that doesn't help either because it doesn't allow for dialogue, and I don't think it allows for. They talk about respect in football, but I don't think there is the opportunity to have respect because of the way it's all. The way they're coached. So I just think that's the biggest negative. I don't like VAR. I don't see the point in it. I think that's what football's all about. Sit in the pub afterwards and moan about a decision or think you've got away with one or whatever. I don't think there's a need to keep changing the game. I think the game was pretty good before. I think some of the stuff they've brought in over the last sort of 30, 40 years is brilliant, like the back pass and things like that. But just take the 6-second rule. Well, there was a rule for time wasting. It's really straightforward. You just book the player. Why there has to be this thing now where the poor referee has got to remember to count, and sometimes he forgets and then he makes up a number because he hasn't counted the first 3 or 4 seconds, and then other referees are a bit more lenient about it and other people count slightly slower or slightly faster. It's just lunacy. Like, there is a rule to stop time wasting, it's just a booking. And then you've got all the tactical bits where the goalkeepers go down now. Yeah, they've just created a rod for our own back. Like, you're just creating moments in games that are stupid. And like in the World Cup at the moment, this drink break. Why do you need a 3-minute drink break? It's for adverts, clearly. It's not because the players are thirsty. So it's all those sort of things I just can't get my head around refereeing.
Just expanding on what you said about decisions, are you a believer that over the course of the season, good and bad decisions that would go for you or against you will even themselves out naturally?
Yeah, I think so. And I also don't think referees have a massive impact on your results. Every now and again they get one. You won't find many interviews with me where I blame the referee for a win or a loss, but I just think the way games are refereed just doesn't allow for a good game of football. I think it's really hard for referees to... There's such a difference between their tolerance, and so that creates confusion and chaos in games. And you see it in our league where it's a physical, really physical league, and some refs are really tolerant on pulling and pushing and aggressive play, and then others are not. And it just makes the games really, really, really hard to play and ref.
Looking back on last season, history-making one for the club at the highest ever level the club has been in National League South, surviving quite comfortably, record-breaking run to the last day of the FA Trophy as well, so a lot of positives. Now the dust has settled a little bit. What are your reflections on that campaign?
Yeah, I think we did really, really well. I think it was odd because of the way the season panned out, because we had such a good first half of the season, and then we had a dip in the second half. I don't think we probably gave ourselves enough credit about how easy we made the season. Knowing everyone knows we're not one of the big hitters, big spenders in this league, and going into it, it's a big league to go and compete in. And historically, I don't think too many Sussex clubs have done great in it down the years when they've had a chance. So we did really, really well. And obviously we had some great moments in there, like the Torquay game here, and Ebbsfleet away, Dagenham away, Dorking, Worthing away. So we had some really good moments in the league. So I think we did great. I just think it just tailed off with how the season panned out, which probably at the end of it you feel like it was a bit of a dead season, and you shouldn't really, because it's a tough level.
What was your highlight? You mentioned some of the key things that happened in terms of victories and performances. Yeah. If anything stood out, what was it for you?
Obviously Scunthorpe away was an amazing day. In the middle of an injury crisis, to go up there, and they'd not lost for ages, and we played brilliant. We were better than them for probably 75 minutes of a 90-minute game, and they're no mugs. They're really good side. And then Worthing away, because everyone I spoke to expected us to get hammered. We had no players, literally no players, patching teams up. They were really good ones for me. I really enjoyed the week of the Hemel win here, and Dagenham on the Tuesday. No, Ebbsfleet on the Tuesday. So the Hemel and Ebbsfleet games, because we were threadbare, and boys were just playing injured and patching teams up, and the boys just ran through brick walls to get those sort of 4 points, which basically cemented us in the league. So there was loads. I think it was a really good season. Eastbourne Borough away was a good night, off the back of a tough Christmas, and there was loads of good moments really. I really enjoyed it. I loved the away fans this year. I think they were amazing. I think they had some brilliant days out, and hopefully they don't just not take it for granted, but just get used to these big away games, because I think the fact that they enjoyed the away games so much made it such a good experience for everyone. So hopefully they do exactly the same next year, because at our lowest ebbs last year in that second half of the season, places like Salisbury, which I hated that day, but the supporters were absolutely brilliant, and Tottenham, they were really, really good when we were poor. So it does make a big difference when times are tough. So that was really good. Just in general, really, I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the challenge. I think it's, like I said, we're playing some big clubs. And apart from Tottenham away, Maidenhead at home, Tottenham at home, 3 or 4 games where we just were nowhere near it. In general, we competed with everyone. So you've got to give huge credit to the group, really.
Knowing what you know now, with one National League South campaign under your belt, if you could get in your time machine and go back to this time last year, what would you do differently, if anything?
No, I think we made a big mistake. We came back too early, because we had the late finish with the Senior Cup last year, and we got the boys back too early, and we didn't really give them a chance to have a break, and that was like a relentless season the season before last, and it was quite an emotional season, and I think the boys needed longer off, and I think they needed a bit more of a break from football. We kind of came back in. We probably didn't get pre-season right in general because we weren't quite sure what to expect, and a lot of the boys had a lot of time off with holidays, and it was really disjointed and fragmented, and the performances were poor in the friendlies and everything. So if I could redo it, I'd have given them a longer period to just get over that season with a bit more desire to come back with the right approach, and then we could have probably got pre-season right. But in general, I think there wasn't too many games where I think we got it wrong tactically. I'd have given anything for less injuries. I think that the injuries, I look at it as like a season of missed opportunities, really, because we just never got a full strength team out, really. We worked it out, like 3.5 players were missing every game, like on average, over 250 games missed in the group. It's just a huge amount of games, and with such a small squad, that just made it really, really tough to do stuff. And I think that for me is, you do anything to that. We misdiagnosed a couple, so that we'd have changed that, I think, as well.
As a Spurs fan, I could definitely empathise with injuries and what is causing them. Have you guys looked into the different types and what might be some of the root causes behind them? Yeah,
a couple of. Well, we've looked. I mean, we've gone through it in massive amount of detail. Really, we had to because we're trying to get to the bottom of it. We think some of it was the pitch, because obviously now the pitch has come up and we're replacing it. But we got a lot of muscular injuries at home, and we got a lot of joint injuries at home. And then we had some freak ones like, Brivio, a couple of head injuries with concussions, and then Jack Strange dislocating his shoulder at Dagenham in quite an innocuous one. So there was, and Hester Cook, just the lad blocked his shot, and he kicked the bottom of his foot, and he was out for 3.5 months. And then Lee Harding was a mistake. We didn't realise, it was misdiagnosed. We didn't realise that he'd done as much damage to his groin as he'd done, and then we brought him back too soon and made it worse. So, yeah, we've looked at all of it, really. I think a lot of it was down to the lack of squad, so that we couldn't rotate and freshen up, and people just played redlined all the time, really, which is never very good.
In terms of the teams that have gone up, obviously Worthing went up as champions, and then Hornchurch via the playoffs. Clearly there's going to be a lot of changes in those squads as they move up into the National League. What's your sense in terms of how those teams will do in the National League, given that Braintree and Truro, who went up in recent seasons, have come back down?
Yeah, I think if Worthing continue with what they're doing, I don't think they'll have any problems. Obviously they've got a manager that nearly won it with York, so he's going to have seen a lot of that league. I think they've got a lot of boys that shouldn't have really probably been playing National South last year. I think if you want to do anything in the league, you've got to get players who are better than the level, and like people like Teddy Jenks, they've got a mountain of really, really, really good players down there. Teddy Jenks shouldn't be playing the National South. Do you know what I mean? He's a League Two player. So they've got players already in that squad. Harry Ransom, the centre half. I just think they've got players that have played a lot of football at that level or above, and I think they'll strengthen. And as a club, they're very ambitious. You can see that with what they've done with the ground and everything. So I think they'll be fine. And then I think Hornchurch, slightly different model to Worthing, but obviously they've got a lot of funding, they've got a lot of money. They've been a challenger for titles for 5-6 years, and it doesn't look like they're going to stop anytime soon. So I think they'll throw funds at it and bring in the sort of players, and obviously experienced manager as well, so he'll know what that league's all about. So I think they're probably better equipped than Truro, who I think were part-time when they went up, and they've sort of tried to cobble full-time while they've been in that league, and I don't think they were. I think they overachieved in this league when they got out of it. So it's a harder approach, that, whereas I think the infrastructure's in place for Worthing. I think the ground is borderline, League Two now, and I think they've got plans to do more for it. So it's all there for them. So I think they'll be all right. I think they'll both be okay.
Looking at the close season so far, number one, you're still here. 11 years with the club, one of the longest serving managers in English football at all levels. A lot of people wondering, another season of success for Horsham, attracting headlines with the FA Trophy run in particular. Was there really any doubt that you wouldn't be here this season?
I think there's always a doubt, but mainly because, you just want to keep progressing, and as long as I can see there's a chance to progress, I'm always all right with football. But I don't really want to stand still. If I had too many mid-table seasons, I'd probably not bother being a manager. It just doesn't appeal to me. A lot of people like being in football and they're just okay with that. But I'm not really that into being in football. I like to have, you know, good moments and success and progress, and so yeah, there's always every summer I have to assess it and talk with the management team and then talk to my family because of the commitment and everything. So yeah, there is always a doubt, but obviously, you know, I feel like last year a little bit let down by the season because we had the injuries. I think we were in a good place, and you know, maybe brain plays tricks on you, but I feel we could have done better, and so you're sort of looking to try and do something else really. So yeah. And I love the club, you know, I love the supporters. The supporters have always been really, really good to me in general. Like, I think I've only had a couple of negative moments with them in 11 years. And, you know, as a football club, that's unheard of. I think they're really fair. I think they get where we are in the pecking order. And I think they appreciate the fact that we get boys in that genuinely want to work hard for the club and relate to the supporters and stuff. And, yeah, so that's, you know, you always want to do it. And like I said, we've got good volunteers and great people at the club, and you know, in general, it's a really good club to be at. So why would you move for, you know, something else unless it's really, really, you know, really, really appealing? And it's never really about finances or money for me, really. In general, it's like I just want to keep doing good things, and you know, you don't look back on how much money you make. You look back on moments and, you know, memories and stuff like that. So that's my driver always. So yeah, that's probably why.
Just out of interest, if you weren't a football manager or a coach, what would you do with yourself?
It's a good question.
How would you fill the hours not watching old football matches on YouTube or whatever it is?
Yeah, I probably would be doing stuff. I don't know really. I mean, I just don't know. Like I don't know. It kind of fills my OCD. It's my thing that allows me to be a normal person, really. It's like, otherwise I'd still be doing the same things. I'd probably be out watching games all the time and, you know, being all over football. You know, it's kind of all I've ever done, really. I've just obsessed with watching games of football. You know, my idea of fun is sitting down of an evening, watching 2 or 3 games of bang average Isthmian Premier or National South football, and that's kind of what I've always done. Even when I first started as a manager and we were grassroots, I'd be out, you know, Monday, Tuesday, whatever game, there would be something on, I'd be out watching them. So I can't imagine that would change. It's just, I'm a football nut, really. I think most people in football are.
So you're staying, which will be very good news for Horsham fans. What about the coaching setup? Any changes there?
No changes from a coaching point of view. We've lost Luke, who was with us last year, who was doing some of the analysis. He's got a full-time offer at Ebbsfleet. So he goes with our best wishes. He was brilliant for us last year. We'll be looking to change physio as well. We'll have a new physio, but in general, it's pretty much as is. We've got Sammy and Jim who do the coaching. We've got Ross who does the goalkeepers. So in general, we're a very, very small management team for this level, but it kind of works for us. So yeah, no changes. Jim and Sammy are brilliant. They never, you know, never have any real complaints there, and they do a stand-up job, considering we're all part-time, so everything is as is at the moment.
Okay. Let's talk about the playing squad. I'm going to read out a list of players now, because these are the players that you've retained, and it's quite a long list. You've got Jack Trivio, Jake Elliott, James Hammond, Lee Harding, Charlie Hester-Cook, Greg Lure, Reece Miles-Meekums, Lucas Rodriguez, Harvey Sparks and Jack Strange. You must be really pleased you've kept that many players who've been with you for a long time, who performed so well last season especially. That gives you a really good start in terms of building a squad for next season. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think we've always, you know, I'm a big believer in, like, the grass isn't always greener when you get offered all these players, and we genuinely, you know, get offered a lot of footballers, and, you know, there might be a midfielder who's good, but then I think our midfielders are good. I think, like, you know, like with Danny Barker and Cookie and Hamo and, you know, Lucas and etc. Like, I think they're good anyway. I think, like, I know they know what we're all about. I think, you know, if you bring anyone into anything new, you've got a risk of it not working out. So sometimes, you know, maybe that's not always the right approach, but I sometimes think that, you know, you've got people you know and you trust, and there might be something shinier and new. It's like people always want a new car, don't they? Their other car works, but I just think if you've got people in there that you trust and they get it, that's half the battle in football. We don't have days and days and hours to work on a training pitch. We have to get boys in and get them to understand what we're trying to do, because we are different to a lot of the teams in this league, I think. And we've been different for a number of years, really. I'm not saying we're great or anything, but I'm saying we're different. And I think if you have boys that are connected and understand what you're all about and buy into it and hit it for the right reasons, it's massive. But that doesn't mean that other people don't want them. So you have to work really hard every summer to try and retain them. And you know deep down they probably do want to be here, but also they get offered silly money, or they get offered, you know, it's like anything. Like if you get flattered enough and people tell you how brilliant you are and everything, and then you can always sort of change your mindset a little bit. And, you know, it's quite hard, you know, to get the... When you're with them all the time during the season, they're there, but as soon as they're not, it's like they've got the opportunity to go and talk to other people and stuff like that. So it's always a challenge to keep them. But I'm glad the majority of them have committed. I think some of them can do better than they did last year, and obviously we've had those chats with them. I think obviously that was a good test case last year for the group, and I think in general we did really well. But I also think that, you know, with the right behaviours and preparation, and I think some of them can do even better, and it's up to them now to do it. Otherwise, at some stage, we won't be able to keep them at the club. But at the moment, I feel like they did enough last year. A lot of them, well, most of them did enough to really merit staying, and it's now up to them whether they want to kick on again, because we want to kick on again. So, yeah, I'm pleased. I think, you know, one or two turned down big money elsewhere, and I'm grateful for that. Like, it means a lot to me that they were willing to stay and turn down bigger offers elsewhere.
So it sounds like you did have quite a bit of competition, certainly for some players, in terms of getting them to put pen to paper for next season.
Yeah, I think you'd be stupid to think that any player doesn't get phoned up by probably 3 or 4 managers. Like, it's no different to what I'm doing. Like, anyone knows that we've got some half-decent boys here, so they're going to get approached by other clubs and, you know, other managers. And as I said, I think everyone who does their pitch in the summer is going to only tell them good things about that club. And, you know, you can get dazzled by it, can't you? Again, I go back to the car analogy. Like, you go into a showroom and they're just going to tell you the good stuff about the car to make you buy it. It's no different in football, really. But I think you've got enough, like, you've got quite a lot of credit in the bank with the boys, because they know that I'm not going to stand still. I don't want to just tick over and, you know, have 5-6 years mid-table in this league. If I can, I want to try and, you know, grow something again. It might not be today, it might not be this season, but, you know, we want to keep progressing and having good days and good experiences and good moments. So that's always, I think that's a good selling point to players, because they know that's what I'm really all about, and as a management team, that's really what we're all about.
So do you think that's the key? Because it was one game at the end of last season where the starting 11 all had over 100 appearances, and some of them many more than that for the club. Yeah. What do you think it is the X factor that people come and they tend to stay, yourself included?
Well, I think obviously the supporters are great, you know, and it's a really nice club. But I also think the players have got like an environment, and they've got you know, they've got a group. People that come into the group just love the group, so no one ever really wants to leave. Like, it's very rare that we have boys that want to leave. Sometimes it's like a mutual decision. Sometimes they're not getting enough game time, or, you know, financially we can't afford to do it. But it's never someone going to me, these boys, I don't like it here, or I don't like the way you play, or there's never those conversations. It's normally sort of an external factor that makes people want to leave. And I just think we've got a good group, and we try and keep the group, because I think, like, the likes of Jack Brivio and Lee Harding, Harvey, and now, like, we've got like another sort of generation in Barks and Hamo and Cookie, and that they create a good atmosphere in and amongst the group, and you're spending so much time with them. And I speak to players all the time, and there are other clubs. I'm not saying all other clubs are not as good as what we have, but there's a lot you speak to, and they're like, yeah, the change room isn't right, or, you know, we constantly turning over players, and or the supporters are really overly harsh and critical, and, you know, it creates a negative atmosphere. So, like, you know, I think they come here and they know that it's a really good, you know, it's a good place to be, and it's enjoyable, and we try and make it enjoyable as well. Like, it can't just be serious, it can't just be about the football all the time, and we're fair with them. I think we're pretty fair. But then on top of that, they know that, you know, if you go over my managerial time, not just at Horsham, but there's always been, lots of promotions, lots of trophies, lots of FA Cup runs, and so that they know that we might not be able to do it because football's not like that, but there's always a chance that we'll put something together that allows us to have a ITV down here or whatever it is, which you speak to some footballers, they've won nothing. They're 30, they've won nothing, or they've had no playoffs or anything. And then you speak to like Jack Brivio, and he's had 10, 12 brilliant experiences in football. So, I think there's a selling point there.
We'll talk about other changes in the senior squad in a moment. One thing I just wanted to talk to you about, mentioning the squad. We saw a few youngsters coming through from the sort of Horsham Academy side of things. Freddie Hammond was involved with the squad at times, and other players as well. Do you think there'll be more of that this season? Don't know is the honest answer. I think the levels we're at is very hard for boys to get to that level through the academies. You're probably looking at ones that have just been released by Brighton who are 18, 19. I think Freddie's going to obviously come back in pre-season. He had a good loan at Littlehampton last year at Step 4 and he done pretty well. And so our aim for him, because he is he's still an 18-year-old, he won't be 19 till August. He's going to come in and, as I said, hopefully he spent the summer, in the gym and gets himself into a bit more of a physical specimen, and he's really talented. So, hopefully we can get him in. We'll have some of the young lads in training with us pre-season, but it's very, very tough. You don't see many. We haven't got an academy, we've got an 18s. So we have like just above kind of grassroots from a youth point of view, and I think that's brilliant. I think it's good that as a football club we can offer local people football at all the age groups. I think that's really, really key, that it doesn't just become like 13 boys from Hastings travelling up and they've got no real connection, but they're playing here because you get my point. It's just not necessarily what we need as a football club, but in doing that, because we haven't really got the pathway and the infrastructure to do it currently, it's very hard to then go and get 17, 18-year-olds into the football club that could play National South. And you see a lot of the boys that drop out of Brighton and they're not playing National South, they're playing lower. So it's a tough level to get boys to good enough. But hopefully we get one. You only want one. As I said, Freddie will be in with us and we'll see how he's progressed, and he's still very young, so hopefully he can be that player. Yeah, I have to say, I remember the White Hawk game away in the Sussex Senior Cup where he came as a sub. Yeah. And he sent the White Hawk defence the wrong way about 3 times. Yeah. Put a crossing. So he has something about him. Yeah. He's got good talent. He's a good technician. He's a good footballer. He trains with us literally. Apart from he had glandular fever last year, so he was out for sort of 2.5 months during our injury crisis, which is typical. But he's got lots of talent. He's a good player. It's a big, powerful, physical league. He's got to be able to deal with that side of it. From a technical point of view, he's as good as any of our players. There's no doubts about it. When he plays, in the cups and stuff, when he has had the chance, he takes all our set pieces. He's got a lovely left foot. He's got a great technician. It's just the physical athleticism of this league is huge, and some of our most experienced boys found it hard last year. So he's got to just raise the bar again, and hopefully he will. So 3 senior players have left. Defender Isaac Philpott, he's headed up the A24 to Dorking. Goalkeeper Lewis Carey, he's now with Eastbourne Borough. And then up front, Shamir Fenlon's going to be with Burgess Hill Town next season. That must have been difficult to see them move on, regardless of the reasons, just because of the role they've played in Horsham's success in recent years. Yeah, no, I think it's really weird because the thing with football is I sat at the Senior Cup final when we played Littlehampton, and obviously that was in theory the double team, and before the game I said to the boys this will be there's no chance that the group will stay together. It never does. So this is the last chance for you as a group who've been an amazing 18 players for our club. This will be our last time together, and that's football. It's no matter what happens, you lose people you don't necessarily want to lose. Last year we lost Joel Daly, we lost Dan Ajakai, we lost Chris Dixon. We lost key players, and then we lost Monts and Ola during the season. And every time a player leaves, it's I find it's the worst thing ever. It's I feel physically sick. I hate it. People like Sham is one of the nicest people you'll ever met. He's brilliant for the group. He's been an absolute star for Horsham, an underrated star. When he come in, we weren't a Step 3 team by a long stretch, and he was that first player that had come from a higher level to come play for us. And
he was a brilliant lad. And then Lou's an exceptional goalkeeper, and he's been part of everything good we've done in the last 3 years. And Isaac is a brilliant centre half, and for different reasons they're not going to be with us anymore. But they leave on good terms, and you never know. One day they might come back, and as I said to Sham and I said to Lou and that I'd love them to come to a game next season, because they didn't have that goodbye with the supporters and everything. Usually players leave at the end of the season, they know they're leaving, but these ones were very much a bit of a state of flux early in the summer. So it'd be nice for them to come back and get a bit of a welcome, because players always do. You know, we had Darren Boswell here earlier in the season from, you know, the county league days, and the supporters were buying him drinks after the game. I don't know how he got home, but yeah, you know, it's always nice for them to come back and get a bit of a hero's welcome, because they've been amazing for us.
What about Leon Ravata, supporters player of the season last year? Came in on loan from York City. He's been released by York, and then Ricky Aguiar's in a similar position. Is there any chance we could see them again?
No, both of them want to be full-time footballers, and I don't know what they're up to be perfectly honest, but it won't be at Horsham, sadly. Like, you know, again, both did really good jobs. Leon was a star for us in so many ways last year. He really did a good job when he had to go in at right back. You know, I never expected it to be pretty much for the whole season, but he done a really good job for us. And again, you know, kind of bought into it, came on loan. It's hard to go on loan. You feel a bit rejected by your other club, and he got really mucked in with the boys, and just a good lad. And obviously Ricky, we extended it 2 or 3 times over the course of the season, and yeah, you know, I wish them well, but no, there's no chance they'll be back at Horsham this season.
Did you get an insight from them, because they were coming from being full-time footballers into a part-time outfit with Horsham? Did you get an insight into how they found that transition?
I think the one who gave us the best insight to full-time to part-time was Reece Murphy last year, because Reece had never played part-time before, and he spent the whole season telling me how hard it is. You know, I don't think people realise like the amount of commitment boys who've got a day job and management. But let's just talk about the players. You know, you have someone like Lee Harding, he's a dry liner. Like, it's a tiring, hard job, and he rocks up to training and he's covered in dust, and he has to shake all his dust off and get his kit on and go out and train. And you wonder why at times he can't get to the levels of training. It's because he's exhausted. And like, you know, Reece found it hard to adjust. He's come out of full-time football where, you know, Monday's a day off where you might go in and do a bit of rehab and a bit of video, and you know, then your Tuesday you might do a little bit of a session to prepare for the evening game or whatever, and then you come to Horsham and we're trying to whack video into WhatsApp groups, and you know, we're trying to throw things together on a training night, and we haven't got 22 players to work 11v11 or whatever. So, you know, it's yeah, Reece was a good one. You know, he's a bright lad, Reece, and I like talking to him about his career, because he's had a great career, and everything he kind of said about how difficult the transition to part-time football is, and our boys do it all the time, and they continue to do it in a borderline full-time league. So, you know, when we're not quite at it, I think we had Enfield away last year was a good example on a Tuesday night, and it still annoys me, that game, but you know, sometimes you can justify it. Like, people were rushing from work trying to.
I think the M25 was stuck.
It was a bad night in general, and you know, you just look at those moments, and you know, it does make sense why we're not always at our best. And going to games on a, you know, I think Reece again, you know, travelling same day. You know, we done Torquay same day, we did Scunthorpe same day. You know, these boys are having to get up to get to a meet for 6 o'clock, say, in the morning. Some of them are travelling an hour and a half before that, and then they're sitting in a, you know, not a luxury coach. We're sitting in a normal coach, and it's tight, and the legs are cramped up, and you know, they're not probably eating right. And you know, after the game on the way back from Torquay, I remember, you know, like we're throwing McDonald's down our heads at like 10:30, 11 at night. It's really tough for non-league footballers. So yeah, that's more so than Ricky and Leon. They're quite quiet lads, I think. You know, but it was interesting to hear Reece's perspective.
You mentioned McDonald's on the way home. I know from watching a bunch of amateurs and Dorking, if they get a win, they go to Burger King on the way home.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that in terms of nutrition for your players?
Well, again, it does my head in, but there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, we had a game, I can't remember the game last year, where we came back from somewhere midweek, and we were eating at like 11 o'clock at night in a McDonald's, And I hate McDonald's, but I end up eating it a lot during the course of the season because there's just not much open on services on the way home. And, again, if you're talking about planning and prep and, maybe you prepare food for the players, but, we're a small club in the overall scheme of things. I think there's lots of ways you could do something better, but at the moment we're just not in that position. But yeah, it's hard for the boys. I don't think a lot of the boys particularly like it. A lot of them look after themselves, but when you're hungry and some of the food that these clubs serve up after games is a disgrace. You come to Horsham, you get fed well, and the food's good, and players come away and they've had something, and they don't need to stop off on the way home. But some of the sort of slop you get at some of these clubs, or just like the lack of volume. It's not even enough for 15, 16 players. So, it's a bit of a disgrace often. So, I think we went to one club this year and they just didn't even do any food. So, you kind of like, you have to stop. But yeah, it's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal, and it's not perfect prep.
Let's talk about new signings. There's a few through the door already. Starting with striker Ashley Naddison. I'm going to have to refer to my notes again because he's had quite a few clubs. 200 EFL appearances plus. Crawley Town, Fleetwood Town, Carlisle United, Gillingham, Sutton United, on loan at Worthing last season where he was part of their promotion-winning side. Sounds like a real catch in terms of a signing for Horsham. Yeah,
we thought about him mid last season. So obviously, I've seen him since he first came through at Hawley. Again, going out watching games all the time. I think he might have done it on the interview, but I tried to sign him that year. I phoned him up and he was like, respectfully, I've got bigger fish come in for me this year. I think he was on about 35 goals. It was about Christmas time, and we were going for the title at Horsham. So. Yeah, I've watched a lot of him over the years, and obviously he's a really local lad now. So it was always it was quite a nice fit because, given his age and everything, I think he was always looking to probably go part time and be a bit more local to home and all those sort of things. And when I heard he went to Worthing, actually, I kind of kicked myself. I thought maybe I should have contacted him last season, but luckily for us, he didn't stay at Worthing, and it was quite an easy chat really. So hopefully he can. Give us a bit of experience, but I felt last year we obviously lacked goals. There's no hiding that. I think we barely scored a goal for about 12 games at the end of last season. So hopefully he can give that. But what he is, he's a Horsham player in terms of how he plays the game. So if he's not contributing with goals, and we've had long periods down the years where we haven't had out and out goal scorers, but he will contribute off the ball for us, and he creates a lot of goals. An unusual amount for like a striker really. So hopefully he'll contribute in other ways, which again I feel like we need. So yeah, I'm really pleased we got him, and it was quite a straightforward one really after we had a chat. So often it's really tough, but I'm looking forward to seeing him play for Horsham. I think he'll suit the way we play.
Great. Moving into midfields, Jamie Yiller's come in, and again you're familiar with him coming up against him for Chatham Town and also Maidstone United as well. Last season where they had a spell out injured. Again, tell us about him.
Yeah, I've always liked him as a player. You watch these boys, and he was at Chelmsford and Eastbourne Borough, and I first saw him at Eastbourne Borough, I think. But for a winger, he's like 6'2". He's a big, powerful boy. He can get at people. He can hold the ball up well. And again, I felt last year we had Ola in the promotion winning season, and Ola was like just someone who could do something different, and I just didn't feel last year we had those players that could do stuff out of nothing really. So when Ola left, I think it was just after Christmas, wasn't it, we probably lacked that player, and we just became a bit rigid and stiff and a bit unimaginative. And I've always liked wingers who can do good things and create stuff, and our teams have always been built on wingers doing good stuff. So yeah, it was just one that made perfect sense for me. If we can get him in and get him doing what he's good at in our shape, which is always quite a challenge for players. I think Ola found it hard when he first came in, but second half of that Isthmian League season he was brilliant. But if we can get him to do what we need him to do and play within our shape, he's really exciting for us, because he's something we haven't had. I don't think we've ever had a player like him at the club, so it'll be really, really good to bring him in, and hopefully he can, again, score goals. He's got goals in him, and he's got assists in him.
In goal, we obviously mentioned Lewis Carey moving on to Pastors New. Sam Howes has come in, familiar face at Horsham from his time here before, very popular guy. Ironic that he got sent off in his last visit here to the Fusion Aviation Community Stadium. We'll gloss over that.
Yeah.
Happy to have him back?
Yeah, he was playing for Horsham that night. He's a good lad. No, really happy. I mean, it's the easiest signing I've ever made. I mean, Sam did so much work to make it happen. And obviously, it's great for us, really. I mean, Sam, the year he played for us, he was unbelievable that season. He's a confidence player. He needs love. He needs people to put their arm around him. He is that player, and he needs people to trust him. And I think whenever that's happened in his football, he's excelled and been excellent. And perhaps when that hasn't happened for him, he's found it harder. But I get Sam. I know what he's all about, and he really wants to play for Horsham. I mean, I know he could have gone elsewhere. I know there was other options for him, and he pushed this one so much to get it over the line that I didn't really have to do anything. It was like I said, the easiest signing I've ever made. To the point he contacted the club to get the paperwork. I didn't even have to liaise with the club to get the paperwork done. So his family are lovely, and they really like the club. And when they were here before, they were at every game, and enjoyed being part of the football club. And I think that's another reason people stay, because they just like being part of it, and the families do as well. So hopefully we can get. I think he had a pretty good sort of 6 or 7 months last year of a 9-month season. If we can get him on track and that, I think I've never seen someone as good at shot stopping as Sam Howes. He's phenomenal. So he'll be good. I think he'll be a good addition.
So that's 3 new signings so far. Let's talk about more to come. First of all, Archie Taylor, Aldershot Town, but on loan at Eastbourne Borough for much of last season. And at that level, albeit in a struggling Eastbourne side, he seemed to catch a lot of people's eyes in terms of his ability and his impact on the game.
Yeah, so it's another one, slow burner. Most of our signings always are. It's very rare. I mean, Ashley Naderson was, probably first contact and signed. But in general, it takes me a bit of time to get him in. Like Yeela was 2 or 3 years ago, 3 seasons ago, I spoke to him about coming to Horsham, and he stayed at Chatham. And Archie, I saw him at Westfield, and he was 19, and he had a really good season. I saw him a few times playing for them, and then just kept an eye on him when he went to Hampton, and he had a really good season at Hampton. And then we'd signed him. We signed him last season in pre-season, then kind of at the last minute. I say we signed him, we'd agreed. And then at the last minute, he phoned me to say he had the opportunity to have full-time at Aldershot, and obviously I was like, yeah, great opportunity, go for it. And then I think he's just had a bit of a dip season, just an unfortunate season. Didn't quite work out at Aldershot. Went to Eastbourne Borough, and obviously was part of a side that had challenges last year. So his sort of upward trajectory's sort of flattened off a little bit. So hopefully we can get him back. But he's a really good player. He's got energy, loads and loads of energy. He can get up and down that side of the pitch. I think for us, he can play in like 3 or 4 positions. Wing backs and full backs, and perhaps even as a winger at times. So for us, with our small squad and the way we always try and sign players who can play in multiple positions, he's probably like the player that Leon was for us last year, that you kind of trust in lots of positions. So yeah, glad to get him in. Like again, year later than planned, but he's a relatively local lad, so it'll be ideal for him.
We mentioned Isaac heading north up the A24 to Dorking, and then coming the other way is Noel McManus.
Yeah.
People are aware of your friendship with Mark White, the sort of owner, impresario, manager, everything at Dorking Wanderers. Was it through that connection, or was it again direct with the player? No,
not really. To be fair, it was Sammy, because Sammy played with Niall, and Niall left Dorking, and he's had quite a few injuries over the last probably 18 months. And I think obviously him and Mark, I think Mark's relied on him a lot over the years. He's been brilliant for Dorking, and I think he wanted to, again, stay relatively local. I've talked to him a lot. I've been on, I always talk about this, but I've been on the buses with during COVID. I managed to get out and get my football fix by going with Dorking to all the various games when their league hadn't shut down, and spoke to Niall. He's a great guy as well, and lots of experience, and hopefully he'll give us additional legs in midfield. And again, he's another one. He can play out wide. He's played as a wing back for a lot for Dorking, and he's played in most of the sort of central positions for Dorking, and he gets football. I think anyone who plays for Dorking have to understand the game, and I think we always need boys that can understand the game. We're not an off-the-cuff team. We play with a lot of structure, so Niall should find that easy. We've never had too many problems with the Dorking boys when they've come to us because they play with a lot of shape and structure.
And then finally, for now, Roland Silva, who I think was with Hampton and Richmond Borough last season. So again, he's another midfielder?
Yeah, centre midfielder, sort of like, I can play as a box-to-box midfielder, he can play as a forward, he can play as a 10, he can play as an 8. So again, another long saga, that one. I thought we were going to sign him last season, and lots of things conspired against us, really. So I was talking to him all last year. He's just a lovely lad. Asked him quite a lot about, what teams were like when they played against him and stuff. And again, it's just someone who really wants to be at Horsham, really wants to come and play for the club. I think he liked how we play. I think he's good friends with Charlie Hestcook. They come from the same area, and they'll travel together. But yeah, really good. Another good technician in midfield. But I think what we've been able to do this summer with Yeela, with Naderson, with Ronan, with Sam Howes, we've probably increased the size of the squad in terms of physicality. And Ronan's, he's a specimen. He's a strong, powerful midfielder, and he weighs in with goals. And again, it's unusual. I think you either get power play midfielders or you get technicians. We've got loads of technicians, but Ronan can do a bit of both, which is great. And as I said, I think the boys we've signed have all, they all really want to be here. I think they've made my life really easy with signing them. They've all shown an appetite to be at the club. So hopefully they'll come into the group, and it's going to take a bit of time. We don't normally sign this many that I would say starting 11 players. We normally bring the odd 2 or 3 in, but this summer, because of the turnover of players last year, because of how few players we had come the end of the season, because of some of our diehards who've left, we're going to have a lot of work to do. But all good signings.
So if my maths is correct, I think that's 11 retained and then 6 new signings. So that's 17 in total. Is there any more in the offing?
No, not as far as I'm aware. No. I mean, we're financially, financially we can only go so far, and I feel we've got a quality group there. We're just lacking numbers. Obviously, you've got Freddie Hammond as well to add to that.
So what's the one signing that you've made, whether it was for Climping, Worthing United, East Preston, Horsham? What's the one that stands out for you, either in terms of that was a good signing or there was just a story behind it?
I mean, there's been loads. I think it's unfair. I think the ones that catalysts for success. So you've got, Joe Shelley, Horsham, I think is a Horsham legend as well. But Joe I signed at Climping back in the day where they were paying subs. This is how far back we went with Biff. Everyone calls him Biff, Joe Shelley. He was a catalyst for a lot of good things because he was 4 divisions below where he should have been, and he just played for me because we got on well, and he was brilliant. And then we had at East Preston we got Kevin Kiernan and Mark Pullen, and those 3 in that league was a bit of a cheat code really, because all 3 of them were far too good. I signed a lad called Charlie Oatway, who's the son of the ex-Brighton player, and he came in, and I got him when he was 17, and he hated football and he'd given up, and he was just so talented. And I always say everyone thinks I'm exaggerating, but I still think if he'd have continued how he did, we had a season of him where he was absolutely phenomenal, and possibly the best player I've ever had. And he went to Brighton, and I think Brighton killed him. He came out of the rejection of leaving Brighton. He never really played properly again, but I still think that he could be good at this level. I think he's that good. There's been loads really, and then Metcalf. I would say Metcalf and Kirky. Steve Kirkwood, who came to Horsham, they were massive catalysts for the step 4. Before that, we were scrambling a little bit when we came up. Darren Boswell at step 4 was brilliant for us, and then you've got Rob O'Toole, you've got Chris Smith, you've got Dylan Merchant of our step 4 team. It's very difficult to pick one because there's been groups of boys that have lifted the levels and the standards over the years, and there's been so many. I feel it's a bit unfair to sort of say one really, but you got Lee Harding, half, and then this late, the Isthmian Prem team. I think it was Hamo, Meeks, and Danny Barker. I think they sort of lifted the levels again in the step 3 team, and Sham in the step, to get us going. So there's been so many really. We've been so lucky. Some of the boys we've had, just absolutely brilliant people, brilliant footballers, brilliant boys. All good lads.
Now, I noticed on the team sheets, they often include the players' full names, so you get in their passports, their middle names as well. So with Charlie Oakway Senior, I think his middle names were the members of
QPR team. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Charlie Oakway Junior didn't have all those middle names.
Don't think so. No, very different characters. Charlie, his boy, is very quiet, just a very, very quiet lad. And I think obviously Charlie Oakway, I don't know him that well, but I think he was the life and soul of the Brighton changing room. But Charlie, if Charlie had some arrogance about him and he had a bit more confidence about him, I think he could have been a pro. I think he was that good.
So let's look ahead to pre-season and then next season. So the first pre-season friendly is mid-July. How much time will you get with the players before that game kicks off?
So we've got 5 sessions and we have 12 sessions over the course of the summer. So that's like probably, I don't know, a quarter of what the full-time teams do, and probably a lot of the hybrid teams will have a lot more in there. So it's really difficult. It's very difficult to get the work into the boys. But yeah, we've got 5 sessions. Obviously, we've got some challenges with the pitch going down as well, so we might have to move things around this week. But yeah, that's kind of it really. We've got 5 to get base into them before the friendlies.
And what have the players been up to since the final whistle blew in that game against Chippenham Town? I think it was on the last day. Hopefully,
like chilling out and relaxing. And I've seen, I'm not on Instagram or anything, but Jim keeps an eye on them. But I think they've just holidays, spending time with family and stuff like that. We've given them like an off-season programme that they're all on to just to keep them in the right place. The boys do lots of stuff anyway. They're all pretty diligent and they all want to be in good shape. Some for vanity, but some for football. But in general. We've given them a programme that they've followed, and where possible. Obviously, we've got a few that have just touching the point of return of injuries just before the end of the season. So, like Meekham's is a bit behind, Jake Elliott's a bit behind. So there's a few that they're all at different stages. But yeah, just hopefully enjoying the break and getting some holiday time. I don't think the previous 3 seasons they really had much of a break, because we had that 60-game season, 58, I think it was. It's crazy. So hopefully now they come back a bit refreshed and ready to attack pre-season.
So as you'd expect with promotion relegation, National League South looks different for 26-27. So you've got Braintree, Town and Truro City who've come down. Coming up, you've got Billericay Town, who you're familiar with, Farnham Town, who again, I think you played last season, Folkestone Invicta, Walton and Horsham. What impact do you think those new teams, with Braintree and Truro in quotes, what impact do you think they'll have?
I mean, I think it's going to be even stronger. I just think the league's going to be stronger. I mean, Folkestone, if you see the signings they're making, they're not making signings to hang around. They're making, serious, John Akinde and people like that. That's a National League player playing up front for them. And Aaron Cosgrove is at Ebbsfleet last year. These are proper players. So I think obviously Folkestone are clearly well backed financially, and they're a club on the up. Billericay we know all about because, again, well-backed club, lots of good players. Their team last year was silly good in terms of, names and players. Farnham, again, really well-backed financially, and they're on an upward trajectory, and they've signed most of Farnborough's best players by the looks of it, so that's probably a bit of a local one. But all 3 of them I fully expect to be doing really good things. I don't know quite so much about Walton Horsham, but they've got a very different model. I think the way they play is quite unique. They're a real passing side, and I think they'll surprise people because a lot of teams struggle against that. And like last year, I think they beat Sutton in the trophy or the FA Cup, and I think they've got a way of playing that's hard to play against. So yeah, I just think it's sort of concertinaed it up and made it even harder. But I said last year, Chippenham, I think they finished 2nd or 3rd bottom. I thought they were an excellent side. I thought they were really, really good. I just think they, a bit inexperienced at times and letting cheap goals. And Eastbourne Borough, I don't think there was too much wrong with them. It's just such a strong league. So it's going to be tougher than last year. I think the second season syndrome, hopefully we don't have it. But you saw Aveley did really well year 1 and then year 2 got relegated. I just don't want that to happen to us. But it's going to be really, really tough again. But good, good. I take no satisfaction playing rubbish teams. Poor teams do nothing for me. I don't need the ego trip of a 5-0 win. It doesn't appeal to me. I think I love these tough games. I love the challenge of these, playing against these proper teams. The harder the team we play against, the more prep you have to put in, and that's what it's all about really. So it's exciting for the club to be at this level.
And the fixtures come out for National League South, I think 10th of July. Any particular names you're looking for in terms of, you know, whether it's the Christmas games or local derbies or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I'm gutted Worthing have come out really, because that game last year down there, it felt like an EFL game. You know, it was a huge crowd. It was like a proper game of football, that. And it's a shame we've lost that local derby. Obviously, you know, I know the supporters always look for the Dorking games. We always have some humdingers with them. I don't know really. I mean, Dagenham was great last year, but mainly because of the result, and we played so well that night, and Ebbsfleet away. So all the big clubs, you know, I'm looking forward to going to Truro. I've never been there. As a sort of a football geek, I'm surprised I haven't, but I haven't. Obviously, it's a new ground, and you know, Torquay. I don't think we did ourselves justice down there this year. I thought we were very poor that day. So you know, it'd be nice to go back down there. It's a nice ground and that. So lots of them really. I enjoyed a lot of the away days last year. You know, it's good places to go and play. People who take pride in their pitches, which is another thing. You know, obviously if you're investing in your squad's great, but to have a nice pitch as well is good. And I don't think we went anywhere. I think Farnborough wasn't great, but in general, you know, that was very late in the season. We played on good surfaces, which is, you know, really nice to go to away games and play on a decent pitch.
You've got your squad pretty much there in good time. Like you say, you've got time to work with them in pre-season. Realistically, what are your aims for next season, given you've had multiple seasons of success, whether it's promotion or like last season, you know, surviving comfortably in a new league, arguably without the injuries you could have gone even better. You had the FA Trophy run to the quarterfinals. What do you think you can achieve this coming campaign?
Well, it's difficult because the club is, you know, there's no denying our finances put us in that bottom group. You know, that's just the way it is. We don't have rich benefactors. We're a community club. You know, we're run in a certain way, which there's nothing wrong with. You know, but the, you know, for us to survive in this league for 5 or 6 seasons, I think would be amazing for Horsham as a football club. That would be, you know, that's got to be the club's aim, and then, you know, maybe you build out from that, and you know, you increase your revenue streams and all those sort of things, and grow the support and increase the crowds and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, mine is always to do better. You know, is always to do better. I've been here 11 years and I've finished higher every season I've been here. So you're always looking to carry that on. It'll get to a point where you can't. Do you know what I mean? But it's you know, we just want to do, you know, just want to do better. I just want, you know, maybe not even, you know, positionally in the league, just play a better brand of football, or, you know, have some really good moments, you know, a really good day out somewhere, and give the support. I love to give the supporters these little moments over the course of the season, because I think a lot of clubs don't have that luck, you know, they don't have that luxury, and we've had so many of them over the years that I think that's great for the supporters, because they travel everywhere, and football a lot of the time is pretty bland. You know, over the course of a 60-game season, you're going to watch probably 35, 40 games that there's not much on it. So it's really nice to have these moments. So again, we'll look for moments. We'll look for, you know, bits last year. I think, you know, we talked about it, and obviously I think, you know, I said at Christmas, you know, if we can have a couple more good moments after Christmas, that would be great. And obviously the Southend was a good occasion there, and we had the Dorking win, and we had a few others, do you know what I mean, the second half of the season. So that's what you're looking for really, is to just try and have some additional moments, and try and do better than you did last year in a, you know, largely full-time league. It's not, you know, it's not easy, and it's probably not sustainable what we're doing as a club at the moment. So we have to find a way of bridging the gap, and that would then allow us to you know, to progress up the division really. But yeah, that's all I can say really. I haven't got any sort of main aims apart from just to always do better. So I always do better in every half of football. You know, I always do better in, you know, every month of the season, just to try and keep progressing really.
You mentioned Horsham's budget compared to perhaps other teams in the division, and the whole dynamic around a part-time squad like your guys versus players who can train more or train full-time. Are you surprised at how much money there is at National League South level? Because it's not like the Premier League, where you might get an American millionaire or billionaire comes in with the chance of making a lot of money. At National League South, there seems to be an awful lot of people investing, not really with any hope of getting that money back, let alone making a return. No, yeah,
it's incredible. I think football in general, over the last sort of like 7 or 8 years that I've been doing it, it's just gone through the roof. I don't think it was ever quite as extreme as this. You know, you'd have the odd club that would decide to go for it, But it's just incredible, really, as people invest in, and there's a lot more interest in non-league. Like the crowds, I think, across the board. You know, at step 4 and step 5. You know, when I was in step 5, you'd have probably 70 people watching. I think you see a lot of crowds of 200, 250 people. I think people are bored of Premier League sterile football, and they go non-league now, and they don't maybe travel to Palace or Charlton or whatever, and they'll come and watch their local teams. So bigger crowds. So there's just more interest, and with more interest, I think people are more inclined to invest maybe. But yeah, it's mad. I mean, we spoke to boys this summer. Just the money they want is just ridiculous, and it goes up every year. And you know it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing, really. I don't. It just becomes a bit of a rat race, you know, a bit of a rat race. But also, you know, by having that sort of money, you've got Andy Carroll playing in this league, which I think is brilliant. You know, to have a player who's, what was it, great, 30 million, you know, £30 million signing somewhere, is playing in our league, and I think that's amazing. You know, for our boys to experience that last year, like Strangey and Brivs and, you know, the centre halves that night, to go up against Andy Carroll, it's you know, far outweighs anything they've probably come up against before or since. So yeah, I think it's good in some ways, but in others it becomes really difficult. The good thing about it from a Horsham point of view is we know that the boys we're getting are here for the right reasons, because we just can't go to the sort of numbers that people want. So if you're talking to someone, you know that in their heart of hearts they probably want to be there, otherwise they'd probably cut the conversation short quite quickly. Yeah. So but yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy, and it's getting worse.
Final few questions from me. Where do you get your energy from as a manager? Because obviously you're putting in a lot of hours for the club, you're holding down work, you've got a young family as well. Where does the drive and the energy come from? I don't know really. I just don't really get tired. I've got it's just the way I am. I've got bundles of energy, and you know, probably as I get older, maybe I won't be able to do it. But I just do a lot at night. So like for me, I'm not a big sleeper, so I'll do a lot of the prep after 9 o'clock at night. So how many hours of sleep do you get a night typically?
It depends, but it depends what phase of the year I'm in. But there'll be times I'll have 3 or 4 hours, and
so that's Margaret Thatcher.
Oh right, yeah.
That's what she was doing when she was.
Yeah, but I think you know, I think if you're doing this, I think if you want to do it properly, you just got to give the time to it. So I try and manage my family life with my football, but my family have to make sacrifices as well to do this, which is one of the reasons every summer you have to evaluate it, because it is a selfish thing to do, because you're giving up so much of your time. But I try and get the blend of, time. But I think you've just got to, you know, if you want to watch a game, you've got to watch it from 9 till 11. If that means you've got to do it then, you've got to do it then. And if you want to, you know, plan or prep something, you might get up a bit earlier in the morning. But I do have a lot of energy. I've always had a lot of energy. So, yeah, and I just get obsessed with stuff. So it's probably a good thing for me, because I could be obsessed with something else. Some would say this is a complete waste of time as well, but at least for me, it's a good way of getting my obsessiveness out. And yeah, so I don't necessarily see it as a chore or anything. It's like it's something I find relaxing. So my wife will sit and watch, you know, maybe some reality TV thing, and I'll have it on the background. I'll have my laptop and I'll be watching Hemel Hempstead against someone and making notes on it. So it's just, you just find ways to do it, I suppose.
So you basically blow my next question out of the water, because I've said, what do you do to relax and make sure you do de-stress during the season? You've essentially said your relaxation is football.
Yeah, I find it therapeutic. I find it relaxing. I think sometimes, like, during the season, you're watching teams, and you know, I have this thing. I have to watch someone like probably 5 times. Like, just again, it's a bit of a thing. Like, I just think like over 5 games, you'd have a good idea of what they're all about, for example. But and then I get paranoid if I haven't watched them 5 times. So I have to watch sort of that amount of games. But yeah, I just find it quite therapeutic. I think I just enjoy watching football. And sometimes you watch some of the teams, and the way they play is not nice to watch five games worth of them. But then other times you see some really good stuff, so, and you get ideas and things like that. But yeah, I just enjoy it. But I do, I spend time with my family, and we went to Centre Parks with the kids 2 weeks ago, and there's not a lot of mobile signal down there, so it was quite nice, although it didn't help with trying to sign players and retain players and stuff. But yeah, I do sort of shut off, but not much.
So funnily enough, it's a very sadly recently Kenny Jackett, who managed a number of Football League clubs, passed away. And I can remember a story from one of his ex-players, and apparently after they had a match on a Saturday, by the time they got to training again on the Monday, he had watched the match, including on the Monday morning, 4 times in full, and that's just what he did.
Yeah. So I punish myself if we lose. Like I have to get it out of my system. So I watch it a number of times. So in general, we'll watch the game back. The management team will often watch the games back and make notes on things. But there's some games I've watched 8, 9 times. I mean, I've got a FA Vars game that if I ever want to punish myself, when I was at East Preston against St Andrews, I dread to think how many times I've watched that game back where we, it cost us. I think we could have won the Vars that year. I think we were that good, and we played on a bog. And I watched the game back, and I could picture every moment of that game. And it's like, I don't know, it's just where you are, but yeah, sometimes I'll watch the games back quite a lot to, sometimes just get your head around it, because I think sometimes on a match day, the emotions impact your thought process of how a game goes. And I think supporters, the result impacts the thought process of how the game goes. It's much easier to watch it again 2 or 3 times, and then you get like a bit of a perspective away from the game, because quite often I'll be overly harsh to the boys after the game, and then you watch it back and you think, well, actually it's a few moments, or a bit of. I mean, I always think the Chelmsford game here, where we lost 3-2 last season, and we were really good in the game, but they brought Lyle Taylor on. Lyle's some player, and then they just sort of ran over the top of us in the last 10 minutes. If you watch the game, they went 1-0 up against the run of play, and then we came back into the game and 1-1 and then 2-1, and we should have held out and got something out of the game. But when you watch it at the time, I'm like, you've got no resilience about you or anything. But you watch the game back and it's fine margins. It's just a couple of things went against us. So I think it's important. I'm a big believer you try and review everything really. If you can review training, you can review the matches and maybe look at stuff. So after the season, I've watched a lot of our games just to get a perspective a bit further away from it. And I watched a lot of the teams in our leagues. I've watched a lot of the teams that have had success over the last 2.5 months since the season packed up and now, and you just get a bit of a perspective on what teams did well and what they didn't. And again, if you look at our team over the course of the season, there's some I'm not going to say them, but there's some glaringly obvious things that we need to be better at. Whether we can or not is a different matter, but there's lots of themes that have ran through the season. So yeah, I think it's important you just keep reviewing stuff and watching stuff, and then it helps you learn really.
One final question. What one piece of advice would you give your younger self, the man who started out managing at Climping 30 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've been really lucky because obviously we've 16 full seasons, 8 promotions, and a load of cups. I can't really say. Don't go to Hastings. That would be one. If you ever get the chance to go to Hastings, don't go to Hastings. Maybe that was a bad move for us, because I think we ended up losing. We had a really good side at East Preston. I think we could have won the Vars that year. I think we were very, very good for step 5, and then we went to Hastings, and it was, I didn't do any due diligence. I think that's one thing maybe as a new coach. If I was going to start, is do your research on the club, and don't get dazzled by the bright lights, and make sure you got a full understanding of what you're going into, because that killed us for like 3 years. Because that year we walked away, we had no club till the end of the season, and maybe if we'd have been at East Preston and applied in the January for the Horsham job, we might have got it, kept them up, and everything could have been happened a bit faster. But yeah, I'll just say that maybe don't get too emotional about results. I've learned over the years that it's about performance. If you're performing well, the results are like, it's kind of like winning's a byproduct of that. I mean, I really believe in that. If you're playing badly, that's when you should be worrying as a manager. So when we're playing badly, that's when I'll be watching a lot of our games, back. But if we're actually performing okay, then usually the results change. And I think there's a big difference between those two things. So perhaps that, just don't let the emotion of the result impact your thought processes. If you're performing how you believe things should be done, then the likelihood is something will happen and you'll kick on a little bit.
Fantastic. Many thanks for the chat.
No worries,
It's been
cheers.
really interesting, and best of luck for the season.
Thank you. Cheers.